Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
We usually think of radiation therapy as, this really targeted thing for cancer. It zeroes in, shrinks the tumor.
Right.
And for ages, there's been this hope, this really exciting idea that it could even trigger a body-wide immune response, maybe knocking out distant tumors too. They call that the Badscopal Effect.
A beneficial effect, yeah.
But what if it could sometimes do the exact opposite? What if high-dose radiation, in certain cases, might actually, help cancer grow elsewhere in the body?
It sounds counterintuitive, almost paradoxical.
It really does. But that's exactly what we're digging into today.
That's right. We're looking closely at some fascinating new research out of the University of Chicago Medicine Comprehensive Cancer Center. Their study, published in Nature, tackles this very surprising question.
The idea that high doses of radiation could, under certain conditions, actually fuel the growth of metastatic tumors, the ones not being directly treated.
Precisely.
So to really get our heads around this, we've looked at the original scientific paper in Nature, and we've also pulled in some reporting from health news sites like Medical Express and SciMag.
Yeah, get a rounded view.
Our mission here is to understand this phenomenon the researchers are calling the Badscopal Effect. What might be causing it? And crucially, what could this mean for future cancer treatments? We want to give you a clear picture of this important development.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Radiation therapy, it's a mainstay for treating tumors that are, confined to one area.
Localized tumors, yeah.
And more recently, it's also used sometimes when cancer is spread just to a few spots. It's called oligometastasis. The goal there isn't just hitting those few spots.
You're right. The hope is bigger.
The hope is also to wake up the immune system, get it to go after any other cancer cells potentially hiding elsewhere in the body.
And that hope, that idea of boosting the immune system, led to studies combining radiation with immunotherapy drugs, didn't it?
Exactly. The thinking was, let's use radiation to sort of prime the tumor environment, make it more visible or vulnerable to the immune attack, hopefully triggering that good Badscopal effect, shrinking distant tumors.
But it doesn't always work out that way.
No, unfortunately, many patients don't get that ideal response. Sometimes those distant metastases just keep growing, even after the radiation. And that's what got the University of Chicago researchers thinking.
Thinking maybe the radiation itself was involved somehow?
Yeah, could high doses in some situations actually be contributing to the growth of those untreated tumors? Could this explain some of those treatment failures?
Okay, so what was the first hint? What did they see that made them suspect this?
Well, they were looking back at data from a clinical trial. These were patients with different kinds of cancer getting high-dose, very focused radiation. It's called stereotactic body radiotherapy.
Okay.
And they were getting it alongside an immunotherapy drug, a checkpoint inhibitor called pembrolizumab. When they analyzed tissue samples, biopsies from these patients, they noticed something really striking.
What was that?
In some of the patients, pre-existing tumors, ones that had already spread elsewhere and weren't being hit by the radiation beam, actually got bigger after the radiation treatment.
Bigger. Not smaller, not staying the same, but bigger.
Exactly. That was the first real clue, suggesting a potential link between the high-dose radiation and growth at these distant sites.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely unexpected. So how did they try to figure out why that might be happening?
The next logical step was to look at the molecular level. What genes were getting switched on or off in the tumor samples that had been irradiated.
All right, getting into the biology.
And this is where it got really interesting. They found a significant jump in the activity of one specific gene. The gene that carries the instructions for making a protein called Amphiregulin.
Amphiregulin. Okay, I'm not familiar with that one. What does Amphiregulin do?
So Amphiregulin is a type of growth factor. It can latch onto a receptor on the outside of cells, the epidermal growth factor receptor, or EGFR.
EGFR. Okay, I've heard of that one. It's involved in cancer growth.
It is. And when Amphiregulin binds to it, it triggers a cascade of signals inside the cell. These signals basically tell the cell to survive, to proliferate, make more copies of itself to move around, and crucially, not to undergo programmed cell death.
So it's like hitting the accelerator for cancer cells and disabling the brakes.
That's a good way to put it. It gives cancer cells a survival and growth advantage.
Okay, so they see more Amphiregulin activity in the irradiated tumors from some patients whose distant tumors also grew. How did they confirm Amphiregulin was really driving this effect? Was it cause and effect?
That's the key question. To test that directly, they turned to animal models mice with types of lung and breast cancer that are known to metastasize to spread.
Right, standard practice for testing these hypotheses.
And they saw something similar. Radiation did seem to reduce the formation of brand new metastases.
Okay, so that's good.
But, and this is the crucial part, it actually accelerated the growth of metastases that were already there.
Ah, so it helped existing ones grow faster?
Yes. And importantly, they measured amphiregulin levels. Radiation caused a significant increase, not just within the tumor cells that were irradiated, but also circulating in the bloodstream.
So the radiation triggers more amphiregulin, it gets into the blood, and then it finds those existing distant tumors and fuels their growth. Is that the idea?
That seems to be the pathway, yes.
No.
So to prove it, they did the critical experiment. They blocked amphiregulin in these mice.
How did they do that?
2 ways. First, they used antibodies designed to specifically grab onto amphiregulin and neutralize it, stop it from working.
Okay.
Second, they used CRISPR gene editing to actually switch off the amphiregulin gene within the tumor cells so they couldn't produce it in the first place.
Right, hitting it from different angles. And what happened when they blocked the amphiregulin?
The results were quite telling. Blocking amphiregulin reduced the size of those distant untreated tumors.
It worked.
It did. And what was even more encouraging was when they combined the radiation with the amphiregulin blockade. That combination therapy led to an even better outcome, shrinking the tumors and reducing the number of metastatic sites overall.
That sounds really promising. So this amphiregulin really seems central to this Badscopal effect you mentioned earlier.
Yes, that's the term the researchers coined for it, the Badscopal effect. It's this observation of untreated metastatic tumors getting bigger after high-dose radiation, the direct opposite of the desired abscopal effect.
Okay, we understand radiation boosts amphiregulin, and amphiregulin helps tumors grow. But how exactly does it suppress the immune system or affect things systemically? Is it just the growth factor effect?
That's a great question, and they dug into the mechanisms. It's not just about direct growth promotion. They found that high amphiregulin levels were linked to an increase in a particular type of immune cell. These are called immunosuppressive myeloid cells.
Immunosuppressive, so they dampen the immune response.
Exactly. They basically put the brakes on the immune system's ability to recognize and fight cancer cells.
So amphiregulin is not only feeding the cancer cells, but also potentially disarming the body's defenses against them.
Precisely. And this actually ties into earlier work from the same research group.
Yeah.
They'd previously shown that if you could get rid of these specific myeloid cells, you could reduce metastasis.
Ah, so there's a history there.
Yes. And in the study, they saw that high amphiregulin after radiation led to more of these problematic immune cells. It seems amphiregulin kind of pushes developing myeloid cells down this suppressive pathway.
That's a double whammy for fighting the cancer.
And there's actually another layer they uncovered. It turns out amphiregulin, along with the radiation itself, caused the tumor cells to display more of a protein called CD47 on their surface.
CD47, what's that?
CD47 acts as a don't eat me signal. It essentially tells immune cells, like macrophages, the ones that normally engulf and clear out debris and invaders, including cancer cells, to back off, leave them alone.
Seriously. So the cancer cells are getting signals to grow and putting up a sign telling the immune system, don't touch me.
That's effectively what's happening, yes. It's a protective shield for the tumor.
Wow.
And this led to another really important finding in the animal models. When they combined radiotherapy with blocking both amphiregulin and CD47.
Okay, tackling both problems.
They saw highly effective control of the metastatic disease, much better than targeting just one or the other.
So that points towards a potential combination therapy strategy in humans down the line.
It strongly suggests that yes, targeting both the growth immunosuppressive signal from amphiregulin and the don't eat me signal from CD47 could be a powerful way to overcome this bad Badscopal effect and make radiation more effective against metastatic disease.
This really does feel like it could shift how we think about radiation therapy. It's not just hitting the spot you aim at, it's causing ripples throughout the body.
Absolutely. It underscores that radiation isn't purely a local treatment. It has systemic effects, influencing molecules like amphiregulin that can circulate and have consequences far from the treatment site. We need to be aware of these effects.
Which really opens the door to thinking about more personalized radiotherapy, doesn't it?
It does, especially for patients who already have metastatic disease. You could imagine a future where maybe you monitor levels of molecules like amphiregulin during radiation.
And if they start to rise?
You could potentially intervene with drugs designed to block amphiregulin, or perhaps CD47 as well, to prevent or counteract this Badscopal effect. tailoring the treatment based on the patient's specific biological response.
That sounds like a significant step forward. But we should probably inject a note of caution here. This is still relatively early research, isn't it? What are the limitations we need to keep in mind?
That's a very important point. Yes, it is early. While the experiments in the animal models provide quite compelling evidence for this effect and amphiregulin's role.
The mouse studies were strong.
Yes, but the initial human observations, remember, came from analyzing data after a clinical trial was finished. That trial wasn't specifically set up to look for or measure the Badscopal effect.
So it's suggestive, but not definitive proof in people yet.
Exactly. It's what's called a post hoc analysis. It gave them the crucial clue, but it needs confirmation.
So more studies in humans are the essential next step.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need well-designed clinical trials specifically looking for this effect in larger, more diverse groups of patients. We need to understand how common this Badscopal effect really is. Does it happen with all types of cancer? With different radiation doses or techniques?
Right.
And we still need to pin down the exact conditions that make it more likely to occur in one patient versus another. Lots of questions still to answer.
It makes sense. But even with those questions, it's clearly opened up a really new and important line of research. What are the researchers themselves saying? The experts involved?
Well, one of the senior authors, Dr. Ralph Weitzelbaum, who's a leader in radiation oncology, mentioned something quite interesting. He said he was initially pretty skeptical.
Skeptical that radiation could cause spread.
Yeah, because radiation is generally so good at killing cells in the treatment area. But he said he became fascinated by this idea of communication between the irradiated tumor and those distant sites. He described the findings as opening a whole new way of thinking about the systemic effects of radiotherapy.
That's quite a statement from an expert in the field.
It really is. And it's worth noting, this wasn't just one person. It was a big collaborative effort, lots of different researchers and institutions involved. It takes that kind of multidisciplinary approach to unravel these complex biological puzzles.
And are they
See
planning
you
to
next
follow up
time.
on this in patients?
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Weisselbaum's team is actively planning clinical trials now to specifically investigate these findings further and try to confirm them in humans. That's the crucial next step, to see if blocking Amphiregulin or CD47 can make radiation safer and more effective for patients with metastases.
So this research isn't just uncovering a potential problem, it's actively paving the way for potential solutions, too. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How a treatment aimed at one part of the body can have these unexpected, far-reaching consequences we're only just starting to fully understand.
Exactly. It highlights the incredible interconnectedness of the body's systems. But the encouraging part here is the potential therapeutic angle. These insights might lead to smarter, more personalized cancer therapies down the road, especially for tackling metastatic disease, by directly addressing the mechanisms behind this Badscopal effect.
So for you listening, it's definitely an area to keep an eye on the ongoing research, and the results of those upcoming clinical trials could be really significant.
Absolutely. This field is moving quickly.
Okay, so just to quickly wrap up what we've discussed today. We've explored this emerging research showing that high-dose radiation, in some cases, might paradoxically help existing distant tumors grow.
Right, the Badscopal effect.
And this seems linked to an increase in a protein called Amphiregulin, which appears to both promote tumor growth and survival and also suppress the immune system, partly by increasing immunosuppressive cells and that don't eat me signal, CD47.
That captures the key points well. It really underscores the complexity we're dealing with in cancer treatment and the vital importance of understanding the whole body's response to therapies, even ones we think of as localized.
Well, thank you for diving deep with us today into this really fascinating and important area of cancer research. It's definitely given us a lot to think about.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.